Have you ever heard of the man who was eaten by a bear with his girlfriend? Well, this is the tragic story of Timothy Treadwell, the Grizzly Man. And not only did he get eaten alive by a bear, it was a bear he adored. It is one of the most heart-wrenching stories that you will ever hear. Timothy Treadwell was born in New York, 1957, and spent most of his early life in California. He had a troubled childhood, struggling with drug addiction and alcoholism. Despite his struggles, Treadwell had a passion for animals and nature from a very young age. This love for wildlife led him to Alaska in the 1980s, where he discovered his fascination for grizzly bears. Treadwell was drawn to the power and majesty of these creatures and felt a deep connection to them. I don't know why. Me personally, I stay away from any wild animals. Only dogs. Over time, his love for bears grew, and he became more and more obsessed, studying and living amongst them. Treadwell's obsession with bears led him to spend 13 years camping in several Alaskan parks. But Katmai National Park was his favorite. He would crawl and walk up close to bears, filming them and often attempting to touch them and their cubs. Despite the danger, Treadwell felt a sense of comfort in nature with the bears and felt more at home with them than he did in any city or around any humans. Treadwell's years with the bears were not without disruption, as the National Park Service expressed concerns about his behavior, and the park's restrictions made him increasingly irate. Nevertheless, Treadwell continued to live amongst the bears and dedicated his life to studying and protecting them. He would visit Katmai National Park almost every year and get up close to the bears, filming them, and even trying to touch both young and adult bears. Remarkably, in the 85 years of the park's existence, no visitor has ever been killed by a grizzly. While firearms are banned in the park, visitors are allowed to carry bear spray for protection. However, Timothy became so comfortable with the bears that he had stopped carrying bear spray several summers before his fatal encounter. Timothy would often set up camp near bear paths. In his final season, he went so far as to hide and camouflage his camp at the Grizzly Maze. Tucked away in the dense alder bushes, he was trying to stay out of sight of the park rangers. Unfortunately, this is where things took a tragic turn. In October 2003, Timothy and his girlfriend, Amy Huguenot, visited Katmai Park. According to Timothy's diary entries, Amy was scared of the bears and felt uneasy around them. In her final journal entries, she expressed her desire to leave the park. However, Timothy chose to set up camp near a salmon stream, where wild bears would feast frequently in the fall. This was later in season than usual, and the bears were trying to pack on as much fat as possible for the winter. Unfortunately, the limited food supply in the fall made the bears even more aggressive than usual. Timothy and his girlfriend Amy were supposed to leave the park at their regular time of the year, but after a disagreement with the airline over the cost and changing their tickets, they decided to head back to their campsite for one more week. Timothy also wanted to find a female brown bear that he was worried about. Unfortunately, the bears that he was familiar with during the summer had already gone into hibernation, and bears from other parts of the park that he didn't know well had just started to move in. On Sunday, October 5th, 2003, Timothy spoke with a friend in Malibu, California, over a satellite phone. He seemed quite relaxed and didn't mention any issues with the bear. Next day, on Monday, October 6th, as planned, air taxi pilot Willie Fulton from Andrew Airways showed up at Lake Clark to fly Timothy and Amy out of the park. After landing, Willie thought he saw Timothy shaking out a tarp and shouted for the couple, but there was no response. He decided to hike up the path from the beach and into the dense alder bushes to reach the camp. As Willie was hiking up the hill, he started to get a strange feeling and turned back down the path. As he reached the plane, he saw a scary-looking bear that he had never seen before on previous flights, slowly making its way down the trail with its head down. Willie took off and flew over the campsite multiple times, trying to scare the bear away. The bear, who seemed to be eating from a human rib cage, remained undeterred, and each time Willie flew over the bear, he'd just start eating even faster. Willie then joined the forces with 4 other park rangers, including Ranger Ellis, to figure out what had happened. After getting off the plane, the group started to slowly hike up the path from the lake, shouting to try to find any survivors they could and warn any bears nearby of their presence. The visibility was low because of the dense bushes and tall grass, and the camp was perched on top of the ridge and not in sight. One of the rangers turned and saw an adult bear moving towards them, about 20 feet away. They started shouting, hoping the bear would see them and move away. And Ranger Ellis, armed with a handgun, started shooting at the same time as the other rangers, who each had their own shotgun. They were able to take down the bear 12 feet away. As they approached the campsite, they stumbled upon human remains that had been buried. They found 2 tents, one for gear and the other for sleeping. Both were torn and collapsed, but there was no sign that the bear had pulled any victims out of the sleeping tent. In front of this tent was a big pile of mud, grass, and sticks. Later on, Ranger Ellis said that he saw human fingers and arms sticking out of that pile. This was the first recorded instance of someone being killed by a bear in the 85 history of Katmai National Park. A video camera found at the scene had been running during the attack. According to the police, the 6-minute tape only captured voices and cries as the bear attacked and killed. The video was later analyzed by the Alaska State Troopers. The sounds on the tape are of Amy, who sounds surprised and asks if the bear is still there. The attack was already underway when the camera was turned on. The next voice is Timothy, as he screams to get away. The sound of a tent zipper can be heard, followed by the sound of the tent flapping open. Amy is heard screaming over background noise of rain hitting the tent, wind, and storm sounds, all mixed in with the sounds of the bear and Timothy fighting to play dead. The video shows Amy shouting nearby. Playing dead seemed to work, and the bear backed off. Amy and Timothy had a brief conversation as they tried to figure out if the bear had really left. Being a trained physician's assistant, it is believed that Amy went to help Timothy, who was badly injured by the bear's attack. But the bear had seemed to come back, and Amy had to retreat. Timothy then screamed that playing dead wasn't working, and he begged her to hit the bear. Amy then can be heard shouting to fight back. She shouted, "Stop and go away," as the sound of a frying pan being used to beat the bear over the head can be heard, along with the sound of Timothy moaning. It is believed that at this point of the attack, the bear had Timothy's head let go and had grabbed onto somewhere in his leg area, dragging him away. Amy can be heard screaming loudly as Timothy's cries can be heard over the sounds of the storm, saying, "Amy!" He was yelling, "Amy, go away! Get away!" Timothy knew he was going to die and was trying to save Amy as a last resort. He didn't want her suffering the same fate. The audio portion of the videotapes lasts about 6 minutes, during which Timothy's cries and pleading can be heard 2/3 of that time. He didn't die quickly and was desperately fighting for his life in the final moments. Unlike what's shown in movies, the bear was almost silent, with only low growls and occasional grunts being heard. Adding to the horror of the scene, the sound of the bear dragging Timothy away and the fading sounds of his screams indicated that he was being pulled and dragged into a bush away from the camp. As the tape nears its end, the sounds of Amy's high-pitched screams escalated to the level similar to the sounds of an animal in distress, which clearly would attract the bear. Biologist Larry Von Dale from Alaskan Department of Fish and Game speculates that Amy's screams might have encouraged the bear to come back and kill her. 2 days after the investigation team arrived at the scene, a necropsy was performed on the bear. It was performed by biologist Larry Von Dale. It was discovered that the bear's stomach and digestive system contained human remains and torn pieces of clothing. This event was tragic and an unfortunate occurrence, but remains one of the most disturbing stories people have ever heard. Timothy Treadwell's story is a tragic one, but it is also a valuable lesson about the importance of respecting nature and the dangers that exist in the wild. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification so you don't miss my next video, and leave me a comment on a story or topic you want me to cover next. Check out this story of a man who was lost at sea for 438 days. How he survived? You just gotta find out. This one is crazy.